Hey, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matthew. And in this training video, we're going to be talking about a style of beer called the American Pale Lager. And now, American Pale Lagers are really brewed to have kind of minimal impact and minimal character. They're really great lawnmower beers, if you will. You can drink them outside. They're light, they're clean, they're refreshing, very rounded, as most lagers will be.
Yeah, this is really the first step in the craft beer journey. Most of our guests at the Brass Tap are going to be coming from a BMC background. When I say that, Miller, Bud, Coors, they're coming from that kind of background, and this is kind of just that natural step forward. It's the same style of beer that they brew, but this style actually uses 100% barley. They're not using any filler, any adjuncts, if you will. So no corn, no rice. And it's really the way that those Bud, the Miller, the Coors, really the way that they would taste if they didn't use the fillers. It's
Sure.
just it's a higher quality product.
Yeah, sometimes these styles of beers are referred to as pre-prohibition lagers. If you'll check out the history of beer training video, you'll notice we talk about prohibition and some of the impacts that had in combination with World War II, as far as the rationing of grains, which forced, as Aaron mentioned, corn and rice to be used as a barley substitute. Well, craft brewers have really kind of harkened back to the traditional way of brewing lagers, which is an all malt recipe. So without all the adjuncts and the filler grains like corn specifically or rice, what you end up with is still a light-bodied beer, but a much more flavorful beer with a lot more character to it than what we'll typically find out of our macro producers. So what about this beer in particular?
This is Brooklyn Lager from the Brooklyn Brewery. They are one of the originals, one of the OGs in the American craft beer scene. They really got started in the mid to late 80s. Mm-hmm. They've been around for a while. Their brewmaster / founder, his name is Garrett Oliver, and he's very, very, very well respected in the craft beer community. If you ever want to learn anything about anything additional about craft beer, turn us off. Go to Garrett Oliver. He's got some great books. He gives a great interview. I know you can see some lengthy interviews with him on YouTube, and he really is a pioneer in the craft beer industry. But this is one of his first beers, actually. This is, like Matthew said, a pre-prohibition style lager. When you hear that, it just means that they don't use corn, they don't use rice to fill in any gaps, which corn and rice really are flavorless, they're odorless. Mm-hmm. They don't provide any body to the beer. Really, it's just there to cheapen the beer. This one doesn't do that. So this is a lager, so it's going to clock in at 5.2%, mm-hmm. which is pretty much what you would expect from this beer. It's very, very, very cold. And lagers aren't a huge style brewed by American craft brewers because they're pretty tough to nail down. They take quite a while to age. They have to leave them for a while in the finishing tanks. So they're pretty expensive to make.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. 5.2%. Right where it needs to be with the lager. Really, and when you're looking at the color, that's what you would expect from a lager too. From a regular pale lager, it is a little bit on the darker side than if you're used to a Miller Lite or a Bud Light. It is on the darker side. Does that come from the malt that they use?
Absolutely. Or not so much from the malt, but actually rather from the lack of adjuncts. The adjuncts are what make beers like Bud Light and Miller Lite so light in color. It's not actually the malt, it's more the lack of malt and the addition of adjuncts. So simply because this uses all malt, it actually gives it more of a normal color, if you will. Now this is slightly darker than some other pale lagers. It's almost got kind of more of a golden to amber color, mm-hmm. But still very nicely polished. Great filtration levels on it. It looks very appetizing.
Yeah, it's a very, very. It looks appetizing. You're right. It's a very nice, almost a clear sunset color. If you have a really clear sky with no pink with the clouds, mm-hmm. just kind of this nice golden kind of southern sunset.
Sure, yeah, and the head looks really good on it too. I've got some pretty good lacing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks really nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can definitely pick out that cereal grain smell. Really,
Sure.
really strong in the cereal grain.
Yep, a little bit of almost like a buttered bread, slight levels of diacetyl. It's
Now, diacetyl is that butter is a little bit of a butterscotch taste, which you never want a beer to be really high or prominent in diacetyl, but in certain styles, diacetyl characteristics in certain styles and in limited quantities can be completely normal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a slight hop finish. Now, this is a dry hopped beer, which means that during its fermentation, after when the hops are normally boiled, they actually add hops to the batch, which really helps to increase the aromas more so than the flavor of the hops.
Yeah, that's right. When you add hops, I think we might have said this before, but when you add hops towards the beginning of the boil, or the sooner you add the hops, the more flavor you're going to get out of those hops. The later on in the boiling process that you add the hops, the less flavor you're going to get, but you're going to get more aroma. So it's a balancing act.
Well, let's give this one a whirl.
All right, cheers. Very refreshing. Really refreshing. It's got a lot deeper of a caramel taste than I expected. Maybe a touch of toffee. But it's got a little bit of a caramel taste to go along with that too, which is nice. Nice added dimension.
Yeah, a little bit of toasted bread as well. It actually has a little bit bigger body and more flavor than I was anticipating. It's been a while since I've had this beer. It's really nice to come back and revisit it. And it's, yeah, like you said, I do definitely get more caramel to it than I really expected to. But it's smooth, easy. It's got nice body to it. It's not super light, but it's definitely still a light beer.
Yeah, now it's not super light. It's a light beer, so the kind of person or the kind of guest at a brass tap that would enjoy this, like we said before, is really someone who's making their first baby steps into the world of craft beer. It's not a huge jump from the regular mass-produced beers that most people are used to a beer like Brooklyn Lager. However, that jump, it's kind of like Neil Armstrong said.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm not going to repeat it, but you know.
It's definitely significant, that's
for
sure.
Yeah.
Once you can kind of open somebody's eyes to what real flavor should be in beer, in a very approachable, very accessible format like this beer or other, all malt lagers or craft lagers, it can really, kind of open up somebody's eyes and change their palate for the better.
Yeah, and in the craft beer world, lagers aren't anywhere near as common as ales. Lagers are, in some respects, harder to make. It's harder to mask some off flavors that might develop. They take longer. To make. They have to condition for a long amount of time. There's tanks that a lot of craft brewers can't afford to have held up while they're conditioning a lager. So lagers as a whole in the craft beer world are on the rarer side. So it's a very nice beer.
Absolutely. And I'm interested in finishing this one off. So cheers.
Yeah, cheers.